Hello, everybody. It's me, John White, with another episode of This Boxing Game podcast I record on a fairly irregular basis, it has to be said, to accompany the book I wrote with the same title, This Boxing Game, A Journey in Beautiful Brutality. It was published in 2020. It sold out its first print run, I'm delighted to say, covering my own personal journey in the sport as a interested observer and keen participant at the training and sparring level for many years. And I was privileged to train for a number of those years in Freddie Roach's wild card and at his original Outlaws Boxing Club, where I first met him in 1995. So I recount all these experiences, my first attempts at sparring, the big characters I met and was around in the sport: James Toney, Manny Pacquiao, Michael Moorer, George Taylor at Lochend, and others. And it's also part memoir, part philosophical treatment of the sport, its place in civilization, its history, and so on. Anyway, it's available from all major booksellers, so I'll just give you that plug with Christmas in mind. But I want to do this. I want to talk on this podcast about a number of things. Firstly, about the use of performance enhancing drugs in boxing. This is a subject I have some experience of. I myself took anabolic steroids for about 8 years, on a regular basis when I was a competitive bodybuilder back in my 20s. That was between the mid 80s to the early 90s, until I broke my neck in a car crash in northern Mexico when I was in LA. But that's another story. I'll get to that. So I understand the mindset involved in being willing to do whatever it takes when it comes to competing in a sport or in an activity like bodybuilding. I don't consider bodybuilding to be a sport myself. It's a lifestyle more than a sport. But I was competing for plastic trophies. I wasn't competing for money. So if you transpose that dynamic onto top flight boxers who are competing for tens of millions of pounds, life-changing sums of money, logic dictates that they will be willing to do whatever it takes to either gain an edge, or as the case may be, to just level the playing field in the knowledge that their competitors are likely taking PEDs of some kind, whether it's anabolic steroids, growth hormone, EPO, diuretics, whatever it might be. And in this regard, I align myself with the sentiments expressed by Conor Benn's own sports doctor, this Dr. Usman Sajjad, who's become quite notorious himself over the revelations surrounding Benn's two failed VADA tests for Comeflin, when he said in a podcast interview he gave last year that, on the one hand, he believes you'd have to be an idiot to be caught taking PEDs in this country, given the state of the training regimen that's operated by UCAD, and also that he believes, or he calculates, that around 80 to 90% of professional boxers will be taking PEDs. And given what I've just outlined regarding the stakes involved, I agree with that. I actually think that the real story would be if a given contender or champion was not or had not taken PEDs. Now, obviously, I can't prove that, but it's just based on my understanding of the culture, of the mindset, and also on the nature of the sport itself and the huge prize money involved at the top of the sport, which is life-changing. So this issue surrounding Conor Benn has opened up a Pandora's box, clearly. Eddie Hearn's still maintaining innocence. He's still trying to defend himself over his despicable actions in the run-up to the fight and trying to railroad it through despite the positive VADA test. This was before we knew there had been two failed VADA tests registered in the name of Conor Benn. Conor Benn is citing contamination rather than purposeful ingestion of this banned substance. Most people in boxing are not inclined to believe him or give him the benefit of the doubt at this point, and I'm one of them. I think he got caught at the end of 2 cycles. He was trying to put on trained weight to face Chris Eubank Jr. at the ridiculous 157 catch weight, and so he decided to take PEDs. And these revelations call into question his previous fights, where he went from being a feather-fisted ordinary novice to being this ferocious punching stamina junkie who could go for a full 12 rounds, the full fight at a blistering pace. So something's rotten in Denmark, in the words of Shakespeare, when it comes to Conor Benn's record. I do feel slightly sorry for the guy. I do think others will be taking PEDs. I've just mentioned why. And his sin was in getting caught. But nonetheless, he's been caught. And if you want to stamp out PEDs in boxing, which I think is the only sport you have to, given the nature of the sport, then the board's going to have to introduce automatic lifetime bans in the event of a failed test. That would be impossible though on a business level, because these pay-per-view stars, there's too much money involved. They generate huge revenue not only for themselves but for many other people in the sport. But if there's not a lifetime ban introduced, the other danger is that the sport will become a fringe sport. It will be so lacking in credibility and integrity and probity that broadcasters will have to take a view on their continuing participation, and so under pressure from advertisers and sponsors. And then the sport returns to where it was in the late 70s into the 80s as a fringe sport in the UK, where nobody within mainstream media wanted to touch it with a barge pole. So this is a critical juncture in boxing, in my view. And I think Eddie Hearn's a disgrace. I think his attempt to hide behind contracts and procedure to try and justify his actions on that critical week are proof positive that he has learned no lessons. I think he should level an unreserved apology for what he did, because I think he's helped to put the sport into the mire. He was motivated clearly by greed, the money that he would lose, and also by, I think, desperation. I don't think his own venture is going as well as anticipated, either by him or the broadcaster. I don't think there's enough people who like to access their boxing on through this platform. I'm one of them, and I think he's scrambling around trying to generate a successful card. And this Benn Eubank Jr. matchup was a money fight, nothing more than a money fight, exploiting the name recognition of both fighters, but failing in the process to draw the right conclusions or retain in their minds the lessons of the life-changing injuries sustained by Michael Watson and Gerald McClellan when the fathers were fighting back in the 90s. So it's a bad look all round for boxing, and I do think that British boxing will take some time to recover. For most fans, a boxing ring represents an honest place in a dishonest society, and when they see one of their supposed stars, somebody they look up to, somebody who they see as an inspiration, being caught taking drugs, then the wrath of Thor comes thundering down, and Conor Benn is now being hung out to dry. He's gone from being cited as one of the most exciting prospects British boxing has seen in many a year to being a poster boy for everything wrong with the sport. The other issue I want to discuss is Tyson Fury's decision to fight Derek Chisora. I've covered this already, but just in the wake of the True Geordie interview in which he decided to level a barrage of abuse at Brian Davis, True Geordie, over his supposed temerity in asking serious questions about his decision to fight Chisora. I felt sorry for Davis. Obviously the interview's gone viral, so he'll be making himself a few quid regardless, but he is known to be a fan of Tyson Fury. But he was asking questions that most fans want answered. This is not a credible fight. Chisora, no disrespect implied, he's had a great career, but he's now got more miles on the clock than Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. He's predictable, he comes forward in straight lines, he's easy to hit, and I think he will have a rough night against Fury if Fury comes in shape, which he said he intends to because his title is on the line. Chisora's probably got 4 hard rounds in him, and after that I think Fury will just pick him off at will and end it when he decides to. But it's not just that, it's expecting thousands of fans to brave the cold at the beginning of December, to sit in an open air stadium for hours to watch presumably some of the undercard and the main event. That's taking the piss. It's taking the fans for granted, and I think if this goes on, that the sport will start to lose its popularity. I do believe that it's becoming a circus. I think the influence of YouTube on the sport has been maligned. You've got Jake Paul, this fucking crank, setting himself up as a boxer, calling out Canelo. I mean, it's just become a joke. I think boxing needs to distance itself rapidly from YouTube, from anything to do with YouTube fighting, because it's not boxing. And this is not me being holier than thou. This is me understanding the difference between YouTube boxing and guys who've paid their dues for many, many years, who've got the requisite muscle memory, the requisite instincts required in a ring to do things naturally. You saw Jake Paul fighting Anderson Silva. I mean, it was a joke as far as I'm concerned. A couple of fighting this old man who could hardly pull the trigger. Never mind seriously try and win that fight. But anyway, that's where we are. The one name that I would like to mention who has injected some much needed credibility into the sport is Dimitri Bivol, with his outstanding performance to retain his WBA light heavyweight title against Zurdo Ramirez in Abu Dhabi. That was a great fight. It was a great performance. It was lovely to watch. And I think Bivol is the next pay-per-view star and also pound for pound contender. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll put the link to my book in the description box, and also put a link to my latest Morning Star boxing column, which I write and is published every second weekend. Until next time, peace out.